Out of nowhere, Hitler became the Führer, leader of the German Reich, one of the most powerful men of the 20th century.
Fear does not always announce itself the same way, and history proves that terror can wear very different faces while producing equally devastating results. When people compare Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin, the conversation often turns into a debate over numbers, battles, or ideology. But the real comparison lies in how fear actually felt to the millions who lived under their rule. Hitler's fear was loud, dramatic, and designed to overwhelm people through emotion, spectacle, and constant stimulation. Stalin's fear was quieter, colder, and far more personal, slipping into daily life and refusing to leave. Under Hitler, fear was something you saw everywhere, in banners, uniforms, speeches, and mass rallies that made the power of the state feel enormous and unavoidable. Under Stalin, fear was something you felt even when nothing was happening, a constant pressure that followed you home and sat with you in silence. These two approaches shaped society in very different ways. Hitler built fear that pulled people together into a shared emotional experience, while Stalin built fear that isolated individuals and destroyed trust from the inside. One felt explosive and theatrical, the other slow and suffocating. To understand who ruled with more fear, you have to imagine what it was like to wake up each day under these systems and make ordinary choices while knowing that one wrong move, word, or suspicion could change your life forever. In Nazi Germany, fear was blended with excitement and belonging, which made it incredibly powerful. The state filled public life with imagery, symbols, and messages that constantly reminded people of strength, unity, and danger. Fear was never subtle. It marched through the streets, echoed through loudspeakers, and filled stadiums with shouting crowds. Enemies were clearly named and relentlessly blamed, turning fear into something focused and directional. People were taught exactly who threatened them and exactly why extreme measures were necessary. This clarity created a brutal but structured environment where many believed that obedience meant protection. If you followed the rules, showed loyalty, and stayed within approved boundaries, you could tell yourself that the worst horrors were meant for someone else. Fear encouraged participation as much as submission because people wanted to feel included rather than targeted. Public punishments and arrests reinforced the message that the state was watching and capable of anything. At the same time, propaganda softened fear for supporters by framing violence as duty and cruelty as necessity. This produced a dangerous sense of normality where terrifying acts became routine. Life under Hitler felt intense, emotional, and constantly energized, with fear acting like fuel that kept the system moving forward and discouraged resistance through overwhelming pressure. Stalin's Soviet Union created a completely different emotional environment, and this is where fear became deeply psychological. Under Stalin, there were no clear rules that guaranteed safety. Loyalty did not protect you, success did not protect you, and silence did not always protect you either. Fear came from uncertainty rather than spectacle. People never knew who would be accused next or what invisible line had been crossed. One day you could be praised as a loyal citizen, and the next day you could vanish without explanation. This unpredictability forced people to constantly monitor their words, expressions, and even thoughts. Fear was not something you watched at rallies, it was something you carried inside yourself. The system encouraged suspicion everywhere, turning neighbors, co-workers, and even family members into potential dangers. Trust became risky, honesty became dangerous, and emotional distance became a survival skill. Unlike Hitler's dramatic displays of power, Stalin's terror thrived in quiet moments, unanswered questions, and empty spaces left behind by those who disappeared. People learned not to ask where someone went because asking could bring attention they could not afford. Over time, this fear reshaped behavior at a deep level, teaching people to erase parts of themselves simply to remain invisible. Stalin's fear did not demand belief or enthusiasm, only caution and obedience, which made it exhausting and inescapable. Daily life under these two regimes felt fundamentally different, even though both were rooted in terror. In Hitler's Germany, fear often felt external, something imposed from above and reinforced through public events and visible consequences. People could point to symbols of power and say, that is where fear comes from. In Stalin's Soviet Union, fear felt internal, like a constant voice reminding you to stay alert and silent. There was no single image to focus on, no single moment of release. Fear followed people into their homes, into their dreams, and into their private thoughts. This difference shaped how people behaved around each other. Under Hitler, public conformity was essential, but private conversations sometimes felt safer if they were carefully chosen. Under Stalin, even private conversations felt dangerous because anyone could become a source of accusation. Fear under Hitler pushed people toward collective action, whether genuine or forced, while fear under Stalin pushed people into isolation. One system relied on visibility and pressure, the other relied on invisibility and doubt. Both systems destroyed lives, trust, and morality, but they left different kinds of scars. Hitler's fear created crowds, while Stalin's fear created silence. In the end, the comparison between Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin is not about choosing a worse villain, but about understanding how fear itself can be engineered in different ways. Whether loud or quiet, fear reshapes societies, changes human behavior, and leaves damage that lasts long after the rulers are gone, reminding us that terror does not need to shout to be powerful. When you step back and look at the stories of Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin, what becomes clear is that fear doesn't need a single formula to work. It can roar through massive crowds, wrapped in flags and ideology, or it can sit quietly in a living room, unspoken but always present. These two men ruled differently, but the outcome was hauntingly similar. Entire societies reshaped by terror, caution, and survival instincts. Fear didn't just control laws or borders, it rewired how people thought, trusted, and lived. And that's what makes this comparison so unsettling. It forces us to realize that fear doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like obedience. Sometimes it looks like people simply trying to make it through another day without drawing attention. What makes this conversation relevant today isn't just history, but the lesson hiding inside it. Fear is still one of the most powerful tools humans use to control each other. It may look different now, sound different, and spread faster than ever, but the core idea remains the same. When fear becomes normal, people adapt to it, they stop questioning it, and eventually they start living inside it without realizing how much it's shaping their choices. That's why understanding these past systems of fear matters, not to relive them, but to recognize the warning signs when power begins to rely on intimidation instead of trust. If this video made you think, pause, or see history differently, take a second to show your support. Hit like so more people can discover stories like this, and subscribe if you want more deep dives into real history, real power, and the real consequences behind famous names. Let me know in the comments who you think ruled with more fear, or which historical figure you want explored next. Was it the loud terror of Hitler or the quiet paranoia of Stalin? Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay aware, and remember, the most disturbing stories are often the ones that actually happened.